have a spring game. Welcome to the Michigan Football at the Voice of College Football channel. I am one of the post-game hosts, Desmond. I've got my partner Dre with me, and we're lucky to have Mark Rogers with us as well. Before we get started, please like and subscribe, and also share the video out on social media. And also, while you are here, subscribe to Mark's Patreon channel where he does picks from not only Mark Rogers himself, but also other media members as well. So thanks for joining us, and let's rock and roll. So, Dre, how we doing today?
Oh, I want to tee it up for me, huh? Mostly okay. People out there, it looks like I am not having a stroke. If my lip looks a little off right now, my mouth looks a little off. I have a swollen lip because I was playing basketball and got elbowed and toothing through my lip and had to get stitches. So, but hey, we tough it out as Michigan. So, you know, hey, I'm here. I'm on the IR, but I decided to suit up and show up to play. So doing all right overall.
Good, good. Mark, how about yourself?
I am doing better than that.
So I will hope. I will hope so.
Haven't split a tooth or a lip recently, so all is good when it goes uh, health wise. So everybody, we were sharing some sports injuries before we started to record. So my apologies. I'm going to start getting this stream rolling at 5 o'clock Eastern time. So I'm going to put myself on record here for everybody across the board. We will be on time next week, and blame me for our tardiness. But yeah, trading softball, flag football, basketball stories before we started to go live here.
Yeah,
So,
I go
well,
ahead, Dre.
real quick, yes, of course, we're going to go into what we're going into today, but I would love just in terms of interacting with people as we're talking. Feel free, guys, to put any quick sports what's it called, guys? Weekend warrior injuries you guys have sustained. I would love to see them. So in the midst of us talking, if you want to just mention those in the comments, that'll be great too. Make me feel better about myself. But keep going, guys.
That is an interesting. Yes, we definitely drop in the chat your sports injuries stories, and hopefully more so like as an adult versus
As we
high
can, it has to be
school.
we can, like you said, Daz. It cannot be as an adolescent playing in high school. It has to be okay. Yeah, nothing on the line besides just your pride.
Yes, yes,
And
it's
you
got to
got hurt.
be, yeah, something like that. And I'm pretty fortunate. I haven't had many injuries, but I am now, is being 35. I'm still, I would call young. Uh, I am in precaution mode to where, because I've had such a good string of injuries, I realize at some point the luck has to run out. So I'm very cautious of, getting warmed up, stretching, and even too on a regular basis of, working out, things like that. I try to make sure I'm stretching a lot, working on the lower back and all that good stuff. So I try to prevent it as much as I can. I'm changing the oil regularly on the car instead of just, driving it 10,000 miles until something starts burning and it's bad.
And you're not only allowed to call yourself young, Des. Please, I encourage you to call yourself young. You're really young, really really young.
Yes, my 10-year-old daughter thinks that as well. So she tells me you're young until you die. I'm like, I can roll with that. I can roll
Good.
with that. I know everyone doesn't, but I do. I do. So I don't know if we have enough show to go through Dre's Weekend Warrior injuries report, but do you have a favorite or most drastic?
That's a great question. I don't want to have recency bias because of this. I would say the one that sticks out because it really made me question, was this all worth it? Like I had that moment in the hospital when I'm like, you know what, I gotta go to work. I can't go to work on Monday. This isn't worth doing anymore. And yet, after I healed, I continued to do it. But I did have that moment, and it was when I tore my groin playing baseball. It was about 5 years ago. Um, long story short, guys, I played competitive baseball in the summertime. and hit a ground ball at second base. Tried to haul butt to beat it out to first. No, it wasn't a playoff game. It was just a regular season game. So it was nothing big on the line, but just my pride. I guess I got mad. I was trying to get there safe and that last stride to hit the base and heard a pop and not collapsed and had to be helped to the bench area. As I'm laying down, I started to sweat. I'm in a lot of pain. I thought I went into shock, and I told my friends, including Desmond, "Hey, man, I think I went into shock last night," which I was, ridiculed and joked about to no end. But yes, I was in the hospital and couldn't move my leg and had to wear crutches to work. And I had that moment when I was like, you know what? I don't think this is worth it. But
Yeah.
yeah, that one takes the cake.
And a couple caveats in your story. So number one, I want the viewers to understand we're not talking about softball. So Dre wasn't in a competitive softball league. He was in a baseball fast pitch league. To me, that just the sounds of that, and granted, at that time, I think you were what, 23, what,
That
22,
was
something
early
like.
20s, early
Yeah,
20s for
early
sure.
20s.
Yeah.
To me, that was wild that you did that even at that age. I'm like, wait a minute, Dre. So we're talking
I
about
didn't stretch. Didn't
you
stretch.
potentially guys who played high level college baseball, or what might be worse is a middle school a guy who essentially got cut after middle school, but still has the dream rolling and is throwing the ball as hard as he can towards you. That's
Yeah.
almost the worst part to
Yeah.
me, and I'm just like, man, the risk is just way it's just way too high.
I know a couple guys that kept that going into their like late 30s
Yeah.
playing
That's
playing hardball. And I'm
Yeah.
like, wow.
No, no,
Are
no.
you still playing in the league, Dre?
It'll be delayed this year because I'm having a little one this year, so it'll be a little delayed. And but talking over with the wife, I plan to return eventually this year if I can, but for sure next year. But it's yeah, man. It's
Okay,
it
so I want you to real quick, let's think about this scenario. Let's assume you don't get as injured as you did drastically before, because that was pretty serious. But let's just say you tweak a hamstring and
yeah,
you're limping, right? You
yeah,
can't walk normally.
right.
Now imagine carrying your little one up or down the stairs with a limp
Oh,
and also with, a diaper bag or a
not to
bottle
mention
or, you
not
know,
to mention like there was some even the worst part of that whole thing is the anger from my wife that the fact I am hurt. That's going to be even worse. And like the extra, yes, I understand this. It sounds terrible.
Okay. No, it
Um,
just sounds like you're selling it that you probably shouldn't do that. That's what it sounds like to me. I don't.
it
I mean,
does. It does. But you know what? The segue. I could talk about this all day. The segue into something that you guys probably know I was going to ask you, but maybe you had on the show. Oh, sorry, the show sheet or not. Um, you know, how about JJ coming out there? Did you guys hear his comments about, uh, all we know as of now is beating Ohio State, and and that's what we're going to focus on going forward. I'll just start off and say, guys, I did not mind it. I didn't find it arrogant. I found it more like my thought process from that comment was more like, hey, we're not thinking about the past, too much of the past. We're thinking more about this fresh start. And as of now, our recent memory is us beating Ohio State, and we plan to keep that going forward. And I kind of dug it. I didn't find it arrogant. I found it more positive, and and I don't mind a guy who I do view as the present and future of this program talking in that way. I kind of dug it. Wanted to get you guys' thoughts on it.
Mark, what do you think?
Well, I didn't have any issue with it. I do think that there is room for especially college athletes to kind of take up for their school, take up for what's happened in the past and say, if you're taking over a program that's been down, let's say, and trying to do some things to to reclaim the past, but also, JJ McCarthy, um, other players on Michigan's roster that weren't there prior to 2019, 2020. Yeah, they didn't lose any football games to Ohio State. They shouldn't have to apologize for it or
I
try to
love hearing that.
take on some kind of blame for 15 losses in 17 years or anything like
We're
that.
not worried about that. We're not worried about that. What's we think about recent?
The thing is as soon as he includes the word "we," like how many people is he talking? If he wants to cut it straight, then he can't speak for everybody in the locker room and say, we don't know what it's like to lose to Ohio State. You don't know what it's like to lose to Ohio State. Some of your other freshman guys around there, sure, you can take up for them, but that's not true.
Can you imagine if the question at press conference, JJ, going into next year's game, JJ, I mean, obviously, you love being here and you're familiar with the seriousness of this rivalry. Now that Michigan's 1-14, we're not worried about the past. Yeah, yeah, I understand, but yeah, not that Michigan, going to this rivalry, that you guys are, 1-15 in the last 16. Yeah, we're not worried about that. We're 1-0. Can you imagine?
We're
I
we're
would love
on
you
we're
just
on to Cincinnati. We're
go
on to
on to Cincinnati.
Cincinnati. We're
We're
on
not
to
worried about that.
Cincinnati. Yeah,
We're 1-0.
to me, the literally one thing I typed was all bets are off in a rivalry. So to me, I'm fine with it. I don't, and I say that within reason, like but yeah, this is well within bounds. A little jab at your rival, I don't think is. I mean, it's fine. I like it. I think to me, this year might be a bigger buildup in the Michigan Ohio State game just because now we have the recency of Michigan winning the obviously the most recent game in the midst of Ohio State having a pretty big streak. So I think the buildup to the game is going to be awesome. I think it'll be incredible, and I think there will be. I think this is probably the very very tip of the iceberg. Like we're going to see so much more trash talk between Michigan, Ohio State coaches and players. So I'm excited for it, and I give him a little kudos for going out and saying that because he definitely could have played it coy and done the well, we had success with them, against them last year, and this year's a new season, and we got to prepare, and he could have easily done that, and I don't know. I mean, I'm good with it. I think if I was JJ's spokesperson, which I'm not, I probably would have aired on, hey, just go with the canned answer that we wrote down for you. Don't don't jump in there. Don't jump in the pool. They're inviting you, but don't jump in. But no, I'm fine with it. It's cool. It's fun. It's headlines. I mean, because at this point of the season, we're not hearing much of anything coming out of spring camp, spring ball. So it gives us something to talk about, and I think it's fun. I think this is what makes college football fun and exciting. And unlike the NFL, these are the big rivalries. To me, I don't really think there are really rivalries in the NFL outside of maybe a couple, but it's fun. I like it, and I thought his comments were pretty fun, pretty cool, and I'm sure Michigan fans loved it. So
I've told you guys that Ohio State fans are paranoid with Michigan, and not only Ohio State fans, Ohio State itself, the actual, I'm not going to speak for the players, but the school, the administration, the program is paranoid with Michigan, which again fascinates me uh, because if we take this back 2 or 3 months, they had won a zillion in a row. And, you're typically not paranoid with someone that you dominate. It just doesn't make any sense, but they are, and they continue to be to the point that JJ McCarthy not only made those comments, but Ohio State posted these comments in their team facility.
I did see that.
And the quote that's posted is, "That's all we know is beating Ohio State right now. Dot dot
It's,
dot. So we're going to
it's
keep
so
that
obsessed.
going."
It's so
Well, but here's the thing that I look at, and when I said if I was his spokesperson, I would say go with the canned answer because I vividly remember Justin Fields, and I can't remember what happened in that time frame, but there was something that was said by a Michigan player about Ohio State, and that was in their weight room. Like Justin Fields had commented on it. Was like, yeah, that was in our weight room, and we saw that every day when we went in to lift and the motivation. To me, I am one that I never want to give my opponent any additional reason to be up to potentially beat me in a game. I get it, the game is 8 months away, so maybe they'll forget about this quote, but probably not considering it's in their weight room. But I'm of one that I just would rather avoid that. But to each their own. But yes, I did see that quote is in the. I don't know if that's the weight room or locker room or whatever the case, but it is posted, and the Ohio State players are seeing it on a daily basis.
But you know what? Like they were going to have plenty of motivation anyway, just because of the way they got beat last year. They didn't just get beat, on the scoreboard. Like they got manhandled in the trenches. And I think that is something that they felt and hand in hand on the field. I think it's something that they heard about for plenty of weeks afterwards. So I think that it was going to be plenty of they have more than enough motivation already um, to come
But
back. And
to have plenty motivation and then plenty plus some motivation,
I
I
get
would
it.
I would. That's just me.
No, I understand what we're going for, Dash. You know what? I think I'm okay as long as as long as you go back it up, and I didn't find it. I think he pushed it a little bit. He pushed the envelope a little bit. I don't think he crossed that line of disrespect, but I thought
No,
it was playful jab, and I don't mind playful jab, especially when you won recently. And as long as you're not, like I think what in comparison, Mike Hart calling MSU little brother is disrespectful. Like I think that's going past the line of playful jab. That's like, no, you're beneath us if I call you little brother. I don't look at a JJ doing that. He's not saying we're beneath Ohio State. He says all we know as of now is that we beat Ohio State. And like Mark, correctly put, in JJ's world, that is all he knows as a player. So, I didn't mind it. I like it. All I know is, I hope we all deserve um, to arrive. What is that? November 27th, 28th, whenever the game will be,
12 p.m.
22 of
Eastern
this
Standard
year.
Time.
We all deserve that to be the same stakes as it was last fall, because it's going to be a lot of fun. A lot of fun. And I know a lot of Ohio State fans were just so upset to see that Jimmy potentially was going to go to NFL, and then they were equally equally elated to see that he came back because they cannot wait to get him back down in C-Bus. So,
Well, I
no,
think, and maybe I'm incorrect in speaking for some Ohio State fans, I feel like they were upset that he didn't. I think they were happy to have him come back because
absolutely.
overall the track record has been Ohio State gets the best of Michigan since he's been there. So, yeah, it'll be interesting, and I'm excited. I think this game will be. I think it'll actually have more build up than last year's game did, even though both teams were, I mean, really good. I think what top six, top five going into that game. So I think it'll be a good one, and we'll see what ends up happening. But like I said, to circle back, I prefer to not give any additional ammo, but I feel like this is one of those quotes where video would provide a lot of context to see exactly like his facial expression, like when he said it, like was it kind of like smirk, was he serious, like and not that it would change a whole lot, but it'd probably give you a little more context
Well,
of
his head
what he
coach
meant by it.
already went worse, guys. I mean, Jimmy essentially said that Ryan Day has been riding on the coattails of Urban Meyer and Tressel. Like that's essentially what he said. But the whole some people if they hit a triple because they're already standing on third
Starting
base.
on third
Like
base, yeah.
it's already like there's already been a lot of trash talk. So at this point, Michigan's digging that hole, right? They're digging that hole, and they're going to have to prove themselves, and I'm okay with it. But best believe, like if we get to C-Bus and we get our doors blown off, then we have the right, and others have the right to make fun of Michigan if that happens. So, you know, this Mark,
If
what are your what do
It,
you want
it,
to
it's
say?
only fair, and I would only be a stand-up guy to repeat here what I said on our Ohio State live stream earlier today.
Oh, great.
So, Michigan fans, buckle up. You may not like this.
Uh-oh.
Um, so, whatever you're going to put value into what I have to say, but based on the state of the two programs currently,
Oh God.
and things can change. Certainly, different coaches can take over. They can upgrade the program. The program can decline. But based on what I'm currently seeing, regardless of what we saw 2 to 3 months ago, number one, I don't expect Ohio State or anybody else to keep up a pace of winning against a school that's that good. Is Ohio State going to win the next 14 out of 15 against Rutgers? Well, they damn better well do that, if not win them all. So we're talking about Michigan. So we're talking about a program that's been top 10 to 15 under Harbaugh versus a program that's been top 3 to 4. And but the gap in the wins over the last 15, 16, going on 20 years shouldn't be as wide as they are. The spread in the series. So I don't expect that to continue. But based on where I think Ohio State still stands and where Michigan is, I do expect Ohio State to win 70-75% of these games going forward until something changes.
Well, you know, actually, Mark, I'm proud of you. I think that actually is that's with that is I think it's some you sound very humble with saying that. You sound informed, and why should we be surprised? You're Mark Rogers. This is what you do. Uh,
the voice of college football.
the voice of college football. I actually don't have a problem with that. I think Ohio State is in front of Michigan. I think Michigan is trying to catch Ohio State, right? And that doesn't happen, in a blink of an eye. That has to be a trip. His thing is not like Michigan is just going to keep picking up momentum and Ohio State's going to lose all of theirs. No, Ohio State's all of a sudden is not going to just stop recruiting well. They're not, like they are the last 15, 20 years the king of this conference. They just are. And you will be a uninformed or a slappy to say otherwise. But and that's why I think this next year is really key for Michigan. It will be do wonders for their credibility in this rivalry uh, to go to C-Bus and beat Ohio State back-to-back years. I mean, what's the last time Michigan can say that? I can't, off memory, I can't recall. It will
2000.
be 2000. That's the last time they won back-to-back. I mean, that's over 20 years ago. So I think winning this year, if Michigan really has any plans to become 1A, 1B again in the conference like it used to be back in the good old days, right? I think winning a C bus this year is imperative. It's imperative.
Oh yeah, I'm reassessing the statement I just made. If Michigan beats Ohio State in Columbus, wins a second straight year, unless Michigan shows up and they're 6-5 and they pull off some major upset and Ohio State's 11-0, and it's still like, well, Ohio State was better the entire season. That's
Yeah.
most likely not going to happen. For Michigan to beat Ohio State this year, they're probably going to be showing us that, hey, we're as good or if not better than Ohio State again this year.
And I think a big part of that would be from all signs, this Michigan team is going to look different than last year's team. So I think that would be really big. The fact that not only they beat them 2 years in a row, but it looked different both years. Like the one year you have the defense that's dominant, playing really well, and then the next year, assuming it's going to be, you have an offense that it's an offensive driven team. I think that would be a really big factor in it as well. And yeah, so we'll that would be big. And I think too, it's overall this is it's almost a marathon and a sprint because it's the long game because you have to do it multiple years in order to really push yourself and get into that elite, the upper echelon category. Um, but it's also a marathon too, because right now Ohio State is ahead of Michigan, and Michigan's trying to sprint to catch up, but then you got to get on the marathon and keep it going long term. But um, I sent a text to Dre. I was working and watching some old Alabama games, but it made me think about Julio Jones and how huge he was as far as key piece for Alabama starting, that dynasty and just what they are now. And I wonder if JJ could be that for Michigan, where, and maybe it's not going to be the type of dynasty that Alabama is right now, but just taking that next step or taking that jump for Michigan, could JJ be that first piece that now number one starts to recruit other guys, because we've seen that he's, inviting other guys he used to play with, so on and so forth, to come to Michigan. And, could it start that trend where Michigan is now getting more 5 stars than they did before and getting more high level 4-star guys. So I thought about that and wondered if there could be a parallel there where, JJ would be essentially Michigan's Julio Jones.
Absolutely. And that's why I said, like, winning this year, can you imagine the impact of JJ McCarthy being the starter this upcoming fall? He leads Michigan to I'll be a little bit conservative with the record. Let's say Michigan finishes 9 to 10 wins. But one of those wins is Ohio State, right? And JJ's playing well, right? Can you imagine that'll help his recruiting pitch? You know what I'm saying? He's a young quarterback, plenty of years of eligibility left. He gets some more talented guys there. And all of a sudden, like I say, you get to quickly flip. You can't rewrite the history, but you can flip momentum in the rivalry. I don't think momentum carries season to season, but I do think that it can translate season to season in terms of a one game rivalry where you feel the pressure, you feel the angst, and I think that's what's hurt Michigan so many years against Ohio State is that Ohio State would do like that punch in the mouth, and you could see it in the players' face. They get deflated, and all of a sudden they could see like the floodgates open. And I think this year was the year they kind of really changed that. But that's why I think this fall, in terms of, I'm not saying it's going to make or break JJ McCarthy's career at Michigan, but in terms of, is his career going to be that linchpin in changing the trajectory of the program? I think winning in Ohio State would be huge for that. Huge for that.
To me, Michigan obviously just beat Ohio State and beat them soundly, and they won the Big Ten championship and got to a playoff. They had a better season than Ohio State. Ohio State still did, won a bunch of games and finished whatever they did, fifth or sixth in the country. But Michigan, decidedly, it's not up for debate. They had a better season and beat them head to head. If Michigan does that a second consecutive year, then I'll be the first one to say Michigan is in first place in this conference. They are not just in the standings in first place. They've done this 2 consecutive years. They are now the team in the conference, the program in the conference, to me.
Would you say the same thing, Mark, if Georgia does that, it wins the SEC again this year?
That's a good parallel there. I do appreciate that one, because even though Alabama's closed out their seasons more successfully than Ohio State, basically there was a winning percentage chart for the last 10 years that's been thrown around social media in the last couple of weeks, and it's Alabama's number 1, Ohio State's number 2, and they're way out in front of everybody else. But Alabama's won those national championships. But inside the conference, they've pretty much owned those conferences in a similar fashion. So that's a great point. That, I guess, if I'm going to be consistent, I would say yes. Although Georgia didn't decidedly have the better season than Alabama. They did play another game, and Alabama won by 17 points. Alabama did still win the SEC championship game. So I don't see it quite as clear cut myself.
That's an interesting one. I would say yes for Michigan, no for Georgia,
Of
and
course you
almost
would.
more so because, well, because I think of it this way: Alabama can get to where they want to be without playing Georgia. It's going to be extremely hard for Michigan to get where they want to be without beating Ohio State. Like, they play every single year. Whereas, Michigan, Alabama, and Georgia, they don't play every year, and we've already seen both those teams can play. One of them lose, and both of them still get to where they want to be. I don't think that's going to happen with Michigan and Ohio State. I think that the Big Ten is a very tough conference, but even I mean, with is great of a season that Michigan had last year, and I do think they had a great season. They still had a loss to Michigan State going into that Ohio State game. So, and also Ohio State had a loss going into that game as well. So that's why I think, and like Mark said, I think with Alabama closing closing the deal, so to speak, on getting the national championships, I think that makes it a little different as well. So I will gladly be inconsistent and say I think it would be for Michigan. I would not say the same for Georgia.
I give all credit to Georgia for winning a national championship. They did it fair and square. But I think that there are some considerations in play. Again, they did play an earlier game, and Alabama won by 17 points. Alabama did win the conference still, and Alabama was missing its two biggest threats on offense in that game. Not and injuries are part of the game, so I'm not trying to take a championship away from Georgia in any such way. But
And there's some people of the thought that if you don't win your conference, you shouldn't be in. I mean, I don't agree with that. I think but
Michigan was just more
there's
decisively the better team this past year to me than Georgia, Alabama. Our guy Justin here joins us on a regular basis. I'm trying to interpret what he's got to say. He's calling me out on something here. You also, it's got to be all in caps too. You also agreed, Mark, that our backs, meaning running backs, I believe, were less, grammar counts, were less talented than Ohio's. I call BS. I don't know what you're talking about, Justin, but if you can point that out to me, whenever I said whatever I said about Ohio State and Michigan's running backs, I think both of them have exceptional running backs. I actually, Justin, to be more accurate, I was reviewing the offense, the spring offense with Justin Rowe this week, and that video is posted if you're alluding to that. And I said Michigan arguably has the best running back room in the conference. That's the only comment I can think of that I made any comments comparing Ohio State and Michigan's running backs.
I'm gonna be honest, like I agree with that. I mean, I think collectively, I think Michigan with Donovan Edwards, Blake Corum, like they definitely probably have a better running back room. But make no mistake about it, Travion Henderson is the best running back in this conference. I think Travion Henderson is going to be, based on how he's utilized and statistically, his what his output turns out to be, he'll be a Heisman Trophy candidate. I think he may be the fastest running back you guys have had in a really, really long time. Like you've had fantastic backs, for forever, but it's Travion Henderson is fantastic. So, and I'll take him over any Michigan running back. And I love our tandem. I think Donovan Edwards may even be a little bit more diverse than Travion Henderson. Not better, diverse. I think Donovan Edwards is just as good as receiving as he is running the football. But I think as a pure back, Travion Henderson is the best in the conference.
Well, I think it's similar to the Michigan State week that we had where, we talked about it and we thought that Kenneth Walker was the best running back in the game, but that Michigan had the best running back room. So when you look at collectively all of their guys together with Blake Corum, Hassan Haskins, and Donovan Edwards, we felt like those guys together are better. But as far as if you just have one back, you have to pick the best back in the game. It was K9, and I think Henderson has probably gotten himself into that similar category where you look at him and you say, yeah, he's probably the best back. But when you look at the running back room as a whole for Michigan, I think Michigan has the edge there.
The interesting thing will be, and Mark, you have more insight on this, and I'll be so interested this fall as Ohio State begins to play, and we'll see how Ryan Day, decides to utilize his offensive attack. Is how does he balance between keeping the ball in CJ's hands or giving the ball to Travion Henderson. And I remember, there was like at one point in time some question marks about how Urban Meyer was utilizing Zeke. Wasn't utilizing Zeke enough. I mean, a lot of people he got criticized for that loss, and I think it was 15
Michigan
to
State. Yeah,
Michigan
11
State.
carries. Yep.
So I think what will be interesting is you have obviously a Heisman Trophy candidate and finalist and C.J. Stroud. And then you have potentially the same caliber type talent, but at the running back position, does he underutilize Travion because he keeps the ball in CJ's hands too much, or does he underutilize CJ because he's giving the ball to Travion Henderson? I'll be really interested to see how Ryan Day tries to use that balance because he has such great talent on the outside too, in the wide receiver core.
I think that Ryan Day tends to be a little pass happy. I think he loves quarterbacks and wide receivers and throwing the ball all over the place. And I think that's where he tends to lean. And hopefully somebody's got his ear and keeps him in check. That in the Big Ten, Ohio State's played different football than most of the Big Ten for quite a while when it comes to just the approach. Maybe some other teams like Purdue do it, but they're not challenging for, national championships. Just in terms of the approach of, we're going to spread the field, we're going to throw it a lot, and they've taken a different approach. I want to make sure that they stay balanced, exactly. But I think Ryan Day tends to lean on the pass. That's what he loves. I think most offensive gurus, just because you can do more in the pass game, they're great at what they do, and Ryan Day included. He's exceptional, but they tend to maybe overthink things at times, want to be a little too exotic when they can mash some people a little bit.
I would agree with that. And kind of similar to what Dre said, I think Irvin would get into that at times as well. But I was taking a look actually at Ohio State's schedule, and I believe they open with Notre Dame, but outside of that, the out of conference is, they're teams that they're going to beat. I think I saw Toledo there and some other team, but yeah, the to me, I think the Heisman moments, especially for quarterbacks, is in the big games, making the big plays and the big throws. So to me, I think getting Henderson his touches early on, and you want to almost be cautious with that too, because right, to me, all bets are off in the Notre Dame game. Do whatever it takes to win that game. The next two games, you kind of want to, balance it out. I mean, it's one of those games where, it's a cupcake game. So, get your guys in there, get your, 28-35 nothing lead. I mean, what game was that they had late in the season where, I mean, it was like 42 to nothing by halftime. I mean, it was nuts on
Michigan
what they were.
State.
Yeah. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, go ahead and get up big and then, take your guys out and give them that rest because you've got the Big Ten conference coming up. But yeah, to me, I think the for Ryan Day, I think he should focus on those big games, the Penn State, Michigan games, to where that's when CJ is going to win that Heisman, and that's when he's going to, have those Heisman moments in the big games. But like you said, you can easily get yourself into trouble being pass happy because, a pick six is that for most teams is a huge. It's huge as far as the outcome of winning and losing, and it's relatively easy to happen. A quick miscommunication. A guy got the wrong sign, and you're in trouble. So I would say yeah, roll with Henderson. He's going to get you to the promised land, and then with CJ, I'd focus more on the big games versus trying to always have a big game with him.
Yeah, they played Michigan State and Purdue right before. They might have had somebody else sandwiched in there right before Michigan, and they had kind of slopped through Nebraska and Penn State. And we all know how good Michigan State was. Purdue was really good. Purdue was a legit top 20 team. They finished 9-4, and they obliterated them. That was a similar score at halftime, like 35-3 halftime, game over. Michigan State 42-zip, and I thought, wow, this team's rolling. But they got to Ann Arbor and they got punched in the mouth.
Yeah. It looked like, yeah. Ohio State looked like my top lip. At the end of that game, swollen and beat up. Um, you know, it, sorry, I couldn't but take a shot.
No, of
Uh,
course you couldn't. Of course.
uh, guys, I have a question. I was thinking about this, um, and maybe like I got caught looking at something that wasn't real. You see something about Mike Sandustil being converted to a DB? Did you guys see that? Like
No.
you,
I did. I can't elaborate on it. We had our guy Justin Rowe on a few days ago. We talked. We went through the offense, and he mentioned it that there's talk in camp that I don't want to get this wrong. Yeah, that's about all I can say. Is that I don't remember exactly what was stated, and he didn't have much on it either. But yeah, that's what I heard.
Hmm.
interesting. Hey, new defensive coordinator. Um, Sandustil definitely had a role on the offense. Not saying that would change. He could definitely play both ways. Um, Especially if he is playing in nickel. So certain packages he'll be on the field, some he won't. Um, but I don't know. It got me thinking like, hmm, is this a neg? Is this a good sign that maybe they see something in this kid that his skills are can be better utilized, or he can be a hidden weapon somehow playing the nickel on defense, or is that a possible indictment on our current secondary, and we're trying to find internal on campus solutions. We already know that this defense is going to go through a pretty big overhaul. So it was definitely one of those, I wonder.
I don't think he's gonna play both ways. I think that is absolutely not gonna happen. It's just so rare for a player to do that that I think you have to be just an absolute special athlete where we don't have a choice. We have to put you on the field. But for Sanderson, if according to mgoblue.com, he's a senior. Like this is an odd time to move him to DB. I mean, if unless he is going to start at nickel, I mean, you always want to do what's best for the team, but
Right.
that's an odd time to move going into your senior year. And I get it. Michigan has a good amount of receivers as far as guys that are on pretty similar level, and then Ronnie Bell's probably that alpha in that room. But man, that I don't know. That's a tough move to make for a guy going into his senior year.
I find interesting that you brought up Ronnie Bell, and by all means, we all feel bad for him. What happened. Thought he was due for a big season, and team had a great season without him. But you know, anytime you're the star or the go-to guy on your team, and you get hurt the first game of the season, I believe, and then the team goes throughout the whole season, and guys step up, and you come back, it's like, well, where do you fit now? We saw last year, the emergence of Andrew Anthony, right? We saw um, Cornelius Johnson, solidify himself as the number two option, or he tried to be the number one option at times. Sanders still making plays. We saw gosh, why am I drawing a blank? He did the reverse for us.
Was
Can't.
that Henning? AJ Henning?
Yes, AJ Henning. Thank you, AJ Henning. It'll be interesting to see um, what how does Ronnie Bell, fit into this offense, and what role does he really play in the fall?
Yeah, I think the thing that's different with Ronnie though is we still, I mean, of the guys that you mentioned, none of them emerged as the number one guy.
I
You
agree with
know,
that.
was
Sure.
And
Flashes.
Andrell was in the Michigan State game. Like, holy cow, we've got a player there. And it just guys would just flash here and there. There wasn't
Right.
anyone who consistently every single week was, a 9 catch guy or a 100 yard guy. It was,
Right.
and also too that goes to the play calling of just how the offense was last year, and that's
Right.
fine. But to me, there was just never that guy that emerged as the number one when Ronnie went down. And I also look at Cade and how he played. And granted, it was a different level of competition, but in that game, that early on in the season, he was willing to take the deep shots with Ronnie early on, where he
Yeah.
wasn't willing to do that with anybody until, I mean, real midway through the season, really late in the
It was
season.
really young too, though, Des. Like it was a
True.
lot of inexperience, and I think
Hmm.
Ronnie was clearly, you know, deep by a pretty wide margin, the most experienced guy.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, that makes sense that Cade probably put a bit more faith. And of course, Gaddis and Harbaugh, being able to make those certain calls, absolutely. Like I think the only touchdown that Ronnie had versus Western was it was a go route, wasn't it? And I think
Yeah, he ran like a
it was
slot fade.
like a
Yep.
slot fade,
And Cade
and
threw it up. I mean, he
it was
gave him,
perfect, perfect firm ball,
hmm
perfectly firm ball. But no, to your point, that's a good observation. There was really like the longest pass they did for a long time until they
hmm
kind of found other guys to step up. So that's a good point. Maybe Ronnie Bell just slides back in, and he is that number one option. Because I think one guy, and we both said this either on stream or off stream. I thought Cornelius Johnson really was that guy that they wanted to step up and kind of solidify himself as a potential number one option, and he never quite did it last year.
hmm
Like he would have drops. He just wasn't consistent. And he was like one of those guys that he would flash a little bit. Same thing with Andrew Anthony. And I know he was young, a freshman, I think. It's just maybe that's what Ronnie Bell, what in his 6th year, you know, really shows himself.
It'd be awesome because if Michigan can put together, the type of run game and maybe not as dominant as they were last year, but even close to that, plus having a game breaker like Ronnie Bell on the outside, that can make this offense really dangerous and potentially, a more aggressive pass game as far as when you do throw it. I mean, that could be a pretty dangerous combination.
Absolutely.
And I
This
think we
offense
are.
should be this
Go.
offense should be top three especially in the Big Ten. But I definitely think top scoring in the conference,
Yep.
not conference. Excuse me, country. They should be one of the most prolific. Off, if everything goes correctly, they should be that prolific offensively. They really should.
Agreed. Agreed. Shout out to Antoine Johnson with the super chat. It says Michigan should change the recruiting focus to offensive and defensive line, while Ohio is trying to finesse. We could certainly sell this to recruits. I think that's a good point, and I think you definitely could do that.
But that's when Michigan was at their best. When they were constantly sent, especially at the tackle position. They had like the Jake Longs of the world. Taylor Lewan. Uh, Jeff Backus. We're constantly sending John Jansen. They're constantly sending first round NFL tackles to the NFL. Right, that's what Michigan's at its best. So I definitely agree with the offensive line. That we really need to hamper down on getting those 5-star kids here. And we got to do a better job identifying those kids in our own state. I mean, now I'm a Central Michigan alum, Fire Up Chips, and now I think his name is Runeman. They're about to have another kid at the tackle position that's going to be a first round pick. And we're just I think about 8, 7 years removed from sending Eric Fisher uh, to the NFL as a left tackle, first overall pick. The reason I bring up Central Michigan first round tackles is because if Central Michigan can find first round tackles in the state of Michigan, the University of Michigan should definitely be finding them. And as much as I am proud of I'm a proud alum of Central Michigan University. I know that it's much more realistic for Michigan to have the type of results that I want to see as a fan. So um, they got to do a better job of recruiting there. And defensive line wise, case in point this past year,
Hmm.
your best player was on the defensive line. You
Yep.
know, the best.
And you got, guys in the league, Brandon Graham, Mo Hurst, Taco Charlton. You've put guys in the league, at that spot. Rashawn
Chris
Gary's playing really
Langley,
well for the
Quiddy
Packers.
Payne. No,
Chase
Winovich.
Winovich. Yep.
That they really, yes, they really need to continue to get better at that position. I think that's an area where the consistency, not that we ever had, spurts here and there, but the consistency compared to Michigan in their heyday hasn't quite been there, and that's something they can get better at for sure. I mean, for God's sake, for Sean Gary, I mean, yeah, he was a great recruit in terms of ranking, but he's really just starting to come into his own now in the NFL, and good for him that he is. But you know, yeah, I agree. I agree with Antoine that we're not going to out recruit Ohio State in terms of skill positions. It's just not going to happen. That's their that's their wheelhouse. And quite frankly, they had the right play caller for it. They have the cachet. They have the resume in terms of players recently that's in the NFL. And they have the also just the eye test. If you're a receiver, you're looking at Michigan play and then you're looking at Ohio State play. You're like, yeah, I think I'm going to play for that team in Columbus. Like it just makes sense. Well, if you're a 5-star receiver, why would you want to go to Michigan? It sounds bad. People may think I'm a traitor saying that. I'm objectively speaking. You know, why would you do that? So if you're a running back, like I don't see why if you are a great running back, to me, there's two schools you should want to play for. If you're in the Midwest, Michigan and Wisconsin. If you're a great running back, but that's just me.
It's true. Well, I think that is it for us. Thank you everybody for joining us. Did you have any parting words that you wanted to leave to the people, Dre? Maybe wear a
Yeah,
mouthpiece when you play basketball.
I was just going to say that. I was going to say a real mouthpiece. You're going to play basketball, people swinging elbows. Um, no, it's just that, hey guys, just once again, thanks for tuning in. As the weather's beginning to break, we're now in March. We got spring ball, and we get to the summer, and before you know it, we're in summer practice, and we're talking. Once we just got to get to July. Once we get to July,
Oh,
we-
that's where the excitement comes in.
that's when the excitement comes in. That's when the itch gets going, and and so we got a couple slow months ahead, guys. But we can just get through the spring and early summer. We'll be almost ready for kickoff soon. I can't wait.
It'll be here before you know it. I mean, I feel like January just wrapped up and we're
Yeah,
already
I know.
in, March. So it's hopefully it'll be here sooner rather than later because I need my football. Basketball doesn't do it for me, and baseball
I mean, dude,
I
you over
could
here
care less.
watching, Glory Day or Alabama, 2012, versus Michigan, and we are slack Michigan, watching '09 Bama versus Florida. I'm like, this dude's sick. Uh, and I'm like, dude, look, I'm like, there's plenty of highlight, like great moments to choose from as Alabama. Fan. Matter of fact, me as a Michigan fan, I have to be very spotty. Like, I gotta look, okay, 2006 Michigan versus Ohio State. Then I gotta look up 2016 Michigan versus Ohio State. But here's the problem: we lost that game, so it hurts. But with you, it's like okay, 2008,
You said it
2009,
hurts.
2010, 2000. Like, do you have a whole catalog of just great moments you can click and watch? So I'm happy for you, but just saying, I love
Oh,
you.
that's funny. Love you too, man. All right, thanks everybody for tuning in. We greatly appreciate it. Thanks so much. Y'all have a good one.
Peace.